to the Accessible Art History YouTube channel. Tomorrow is President's Day in the United States. This is the federal holiday that is meant to honor all U.S. presidents, but particularly first President George Washington and 16th President Abraham Lincoln. In celebration of these two great men, I thought it would be interesting to analyze a few works that show their legacies. So, to learn more, keep on watching. Before we dive into the works, I think that it's important to understand the background of this holiday. First celebrated in 1879, the holiday was created to recognize two of the United States' greatest presidents. Both Washington and Lincoln were born in February, the 22nd and the 12th respectively, so it makes sense to choose the month for honoring them. In 1968, Congress moved the date from February 22nd to the third Monday in February. Because it's a federal holiday, schools, banks, and federal offices are closed. Alright, now that we have that sorted, let's take a look at George Washington's life. He was born in 1732 to a wealthy landed family in Virginia. This allowed him the opportunity to pursue his interest in the military and westward expansion of the colonies. When his father died, Washington took up the responsibility of running the family plantation in Mount Vernon. This led him to see the advantages the British government was taking on its colonial citizens, and Washington became one of the Virginia delegates to the Second Continental Congress held in May 1775. A month later, the Congress created a Continental Army. The Adams brothers, Samuel and John, nominated Washington to be the commander-in-chief because of his previous military experience during the French and Indian Wars. He accepted and declined a salary. Through several difficult years and leading a, quote, ragtag army against a professional military, Washington and his troops claimed victory and gained independence from the crown. However, the young nation struggled with the formation of a new government. 4 years after the war ended in 1787, the Constitutional Convention convened, with Washington leading the call for a new way of doing things. After things were sorted out, the convention unanimously voted George Washington as the first president of the United States. He served as president for 2 terms, setting the precedent for all future leaders. When the French Revolution started, he kept the U.S. out of the conflict because he believed that the nation wasn't yet strong enough. Although people asked him to run for a 3rd term, Washington declined and retired to Mount Vernon to live out his life in peace. George Washington died on December 14, 1799 of a throat infection. He is buried in his beloved home with his wife Martha. Today, his leadership and self-sacrifice frequently put him at the top of the list for best president. Now that we have the historical background in place, we can begin the artistic analysis. This painting is one of the most iconic of Washington. It's called the Lansdowne Portrait by Gilbert Stuart in 1796. This was Washington's final year as president. It shows him delivering his 4th annual address to Congress. The major feature of this address was about the Jay Treaty, the agreement between the United States and Great Britain on how to settle all those leftover bits from the Revolutionary War. It was largely unpopular with Congress, but Washington was a big proponent of it and signed it into law in August. During his speech, he tried to explain the benefits of the treaty and to smooth things over with the rest of the government. This painting of Washington is one of the most famous. There are 3 copies and 5 closely related works, with this one hanging in the National Gallery of Art. In fact, one of those copies even hangs in the White House. It's no wonder it's so popular, because it shows Washington as a powerful leader who used the quill and paper in the background to strengthen a fledgling nation. With his arm extended outwards, he appears to be addressing the viewer, explaining how he is leading the United States into a better future. Abraham Lincoln, the other great president celebrated on President's Day, came from quite a different background than George Washington. He was born in 1809 to a, quote, undistinguished second family, as he described it. His mother died when he was 10, and his father moved the family into the wild woods of Indiana to work as farmers. In between his work on the farm and picking up shifts at a local store, Lincoln taught himself how to read and write. He loved knowledge and envisioned greater things for his life, away from the hard physical labor of running a farm. Lincoln was admitted to the Illinois State Bar in 1836. A few years previously, he had declared his intention to enter politics. He was first elected to one of the Illinois seats in the House of Representatives. In 1858, Lincoln ran for one of the state's Senate seats against Stephen A. Douglas. Their race gained national attention, particularly due to the debates. Although Lincoln lost the race, the fame led to him receiving the Republican nomination for the 1860 presidential race, and as we know, he won, becoming the 16th president of the United States. Within a year of being elected, the Civil War started. Slavery had been a hot topic of debate during the election, with Lincoln vehemently opposing the practice's expansion into western states. In 1861, several southern states seceded from the Union and formed the Confederacy. War between the two factions soon broke out. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation that declared that slaves living in the Confederate States were free. This is one of Lincoln's greatest moments. The war was absolutely devastating for America. Lincoln recognized this and said during his most famous speech, the Gettysburg Address, quote, that we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Abraham Lincoln was re-elected in 1864, particularly fueled by Union victories in the war, but his second term was cut short. On April 14, 1865, the war had recently ended and the President and his wife were out enjoying at the theater. That night, John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln in hopes of helping the Southern cause. Today, Abraham Lincoln is considered one of the greatest presidents and men in United States history due to his strength and leadership during one of the nation's darkest times. This portrait of Abraham Lincoln gives viewers a fascinating look into the president's psyche. It was painted in 1869 by George Peter Alexander Healy. Lincoln sat for Healy in 1864, so the artist used those sketches and notes to inform this memorial portrait commissioned by the White House. In this work, we can see the president sitting down and leaning forward, deep in thought. His hand rests on his chin, and we can imagine that the thoughts are racing through his mind. Trying to run a country and hold his fractured pieces together must have seemed like an impossible task. But Healy also painted Lincoln looking strong, nearly regal. He doesn't slouch or cower from the pressure. Instead, looks like a man poised to take action to save the United States. These two presidents worked hard to bring a nation together. Their portraits help reinforce the memories of their great deeds. I hope you enjoyed this exploration into the history behind President's Day.